Welcome to Reliability Matters, a podcast for the electronic assembly industry. Each episode covers topics related to reliability, best practices, and environmentally responsible assembly techniques, with insights from experts across the electronic assembly industry. Now, here's your host, Mike Conrad.
Welcome back to the Reliability Matters podcast. I'm Mike Conrad, your podcast host, and I am not, as you can see, in my usual studio. I don't have the fancy backgrounds behind me. I am, though, in a far cooler place, warmer place, actually. I am on the beautiful Hawaiian island of Kauai. Why am I here? Why not? But why am I here? And it's because I'm attending the STI Pan-Pacific Microelectronics Symposium. Every year around this time, STI produces this event on one of the Hawaiian islands. It's been on the Big Island, it's been on Maui, it's been on Oahu, it's been here at Kauai, and it moves around, devolves around year after year. And as I'll plagiarize something that the STI Executive Director, Tanya Martin, told me once. She describes this as the conference of interesting things. And indeed, it is not your typical technical conference. We don't spend the whole day talking about voiding or additives or all the usual automotive, all that. We talk about everything, including things that are outside of the typical electronics assembly space. Very interesting things. Yesterday, we had some fascinating conversations about aging and about the Einstein's special theory of relativity. I saw brains just explode yesterday. It's an extremely interesting conference. So anyway, a little plug for the conference. Be sure to keep an eye out for a call for papers for the 2024 version, and I would love to see you here on one of the Hawaiian Islands. Today, my guest is Dave Raby. Dave is, let me get a better shot on that. I have one somewhere, there we go. Dave is the president of STI Electronics, which was founded in 1982 by David's late great father, Jim Raby. And I already kind of admonished Dave, pretend the audience isn't here when I'm going to violate that admonishment. How many people remember or know of Jim Raby out there? Yeah, several. Jim was the industry father of mill standards. And I remember back in the day, I was on the manufacturers committee in China Lake, California. And there was all sorts of sentences in the standards, weapon spec 6536, mill standard 2008. And it would basically say, this is the way you're supposed to do something. But if you don't do it this way, if you want to do it another way, it's subject to review with disapproval. That kind of scared everybody. Like no one wanted to stray off the established standards. And Jim Raby was also the development of NASA and Department of Defense soldering schools. Over the last 40 years, STI Electronics has expanded its focus from consulting and technical seminars to providing training, laboratory analysis, research, advanced research, development, microelectronics assembly, prototyping, and small to medium volume printed circuit board contract assembly for our industry. So I just shared your company experience, so maybe just provide a little colored commentary, David, on your company history, if I missed anything.
Actually, I think you covered it quite well.
Well, thanks for watching.
I think we're done here.
Yeah, we're done.
But, no, we have been...
I just want to get to the pool.
That's it. We have been around 40 years, which is been gone very quickly in some ways, very slowly in other ways, but I think life in general is like that. In the 40 years, we have evolved from doing seminars and that type of thing to we are now predominantly a contract manufacturer. That's not what we started out as, but the common theme through the 40 years has been education. I mean, probably 10 to 15% of our business is still training, or IPC Center and then NASA Center, and we do some of our own STI programs. Happy to customize one for you. But it's all about doing it right. I mean, you mentioned my dad, right? The specifications. It was about building hardware the same way every time, having something reliable. contract manufacturing is what we've evolved into primarily, and our focus is the customers that have mission critical parts. You won't see us building, yesterday, I think your talk mentioned flea collars and that type of thing.
No electronic flea collars.
We don't get to build those. I think we cost too much for building those. We don't have the systems in place to do that. We build things that have to work.
You think your focus in high-rel military type stuff has a lot to do with your father's legacy?
Absolutely.
Everyone just knows Raby, the name Raby, knows that. It's associated with...
I mean, maybe a chicken and egg thing. I'm not sure if they come to us because of Raby or if it's Raby is why we do this.
Right.
But I think you're right on that. And those specs you talk about, I mean, I grew up with those on that was before we had the fancy copiers and collators. So I grew up collating, weapon specs on the living room floor while I was in junior high school and high schools.
Every business has challenges. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics states that 75% of all businesses that start up are gone within 10 years. 75%. That's a 25% success rate. And it's higher in some industries, lower in other industries, but the aggregate is 75% failure rate. I think in our industry, it's maybe even tougher because
I was thinking that number was high.
if you run a bar, that's a dicey industry, probably a higher failure rate, but not a lot changes, right? It's kind of the same methodology over and over and over again. Same with the restaurant. Not a lot of huge innovation in those industries. Our industry has changed since we started this podcast, 10 minutes ago. So what do you attribute, looking back with 2020 hindsight, what do you attribute to your success, that you have well-defined the odds of lasting more than 10 years, and you're in an industry that is just rapidly changing, which, again, I think ups the odds of failure. So what would you say are some of the foundational principles that have allowed your company to remain not just in business, but on the successful side of business?
Good question. We have done a lot of work to stay up to date on those changes. Whether it's SMTA events like this one, all the other programming that goes on. We've tried to stay up to date on that. We've been stubborn as far as sticking to what we know we can do. Yes, we go out and try new things, and the things we're doing now are different than what we were doing 5 years ago, definitely different than what we were doing 40 years ago. But we've tried a lot of other things that pulled back on those. It's like, okay, that seemed like a good idea, but it really didn't work. But mainly just keeping up to date on the technology. And I remember mid-'80s, Surface Mount came along and being told that within 5 years you'll never see another through-hole part. And that seemed pretty convincing on that. But and I haven't seen a through-hole part since last Thursday when I left coming over cover. It's that they are still around.
They're still around now.
But having said that, the boards are a little different. The technology is a lot different.
You find when we get a through-hole project that the challenge is having to remember how to handle those parts, how to bend the actual leads, to get them through the hole but not fall out, slight outward bend, whatever the case may be. Does your team just natively know that, or do you have to keep continuous education on obsolete technology?
Okay, yes and no. Some of the people that we have doing it, I won't say they weren't alive, but like the 86, some of them weren't alive when that was happening. So they didn't, they're expert solderers, but they didn't grow up doing that. Now, one thing that saves us on that is we sell a lot of training supplies. So we'll we'll train you, or we'll sell you supplies so you can train your employees. And that training kit still has through-hole parts in it. And you have to form the leads, the resistors, all of that kind of thing. And so everybody that's gone through the classes, and our people are the best trained people in the world because our classroom is walking distance to the manufacturing floor. They have had experience doing that. Now, I'm not sure it's really necessary that it be in there, but that's something that the industry has been slow to change on those standards. And so when we do build something that's through hole, we have to dust off the solder machine and that kind of thing. But we can handle it.
You know, I started a business 31 years ago from my garage. And if I managed to fall into the majority of businesses that fail, I would have felt terrible. But it just would have been me. Right. It's just me. You, I think, had a much more challenging presentation because you were given the business by your family. Primarily your father. I know your mom works it too, but primarily your father who built it. And, you know, you basically had one job. Don't screw this up with David, right? Because it was working. And I think that is a whole lot more pressure than starting something from scratch, because the odds are in favor of you failing. So if you fail, it's like, well, 75% of all fail. Yeah, he's just normally. In your case, you had a successful business enterprise, much different than it is today. We'll talk about that. But you had to not screw it up. You had to keep it going. In the moment, did you feel that pressure?
Oh, yeah. Now, having said that, my father, myself, and my mother all started the business. So I was in there from the beginning. Now, we were there because of my dad and his brains and his savvy, the technology and all of that kind of thing. But I was there from the beginning. So it wasn't like just one day that all that pressure hit. And
right.
It was a family business, and
you kind of have to.
Right, exactly. So it wasn't like I just walked in off the street one day from working at that bar and you talked about and said, hey, I'm going to do this.
It's a P&L responsibility.
Oh,
like that became yours. And
well,
I mean, I'm sure you had your father looking over your shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
All your son.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of pressure. I mean, and you know, when we started the business, there was, you know, my parents, well, I won't say their whole life savings, but most of their life savings went into it. My whole life savings went into it. My whole life savings was like $7.23 at the time.
Right.
And probably a positive number, but maybe it could have been negative $7.20. And so from that point of view, it was like, don't mess up mom and dad's. But that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. No business is without challenge. I view business as a video game where you start off with 5 lives. The first level, you're down to 3 lives. You get to the second level, it's harder. There's more monsters, there's more trapdoors. You finish the second level, you have 1 life left. Third level is even harder. And that's just how business is. Every year, sometimes every week, it just gets more difficult. The rules change. No one tells you. I just have to kind of figure it out on the fly. And so there are always challenges. In the last several years, there's been very unique challenges.
Yes.
Talk about supply chain, about labor shortages, the whole pandemic where no one was stepping out of their home, and all of that stuff. So what in your world, what are some of the kind of daily routine challenges that you're just used to, you know, bending off? And maybe spend a few minutes talking about what are some of the unique challenges over the last several years that have landed, not just in our industry, but specifically in your business.
The daily, just saying daily unique means they're different from day to day. But we now have approximately 60 employees, and on a given day, some of maybe having a bad day. There can be equipment that's breaking down. There can be a regular big customer that hasn't paid their bill in a little longer than they normally would. And so those are typical daily things that we get involved in. There's you get in supply chain and COVID and all of that type of thing, that brought on whole new chapters that we get into if you want to. But that's, I've got a really good team of people that they take care of most of the day-to-day. Let me get out and do things like this, and they'll send me an email that, here's what happened today. And I find it works best, and it's taken me a long time to learn this, and I know you've done the same thing, but it works best if I read their email and then don't respond immediately and let them solve the problem. It's probably better than if I said, do this. Done. So I'm getting more and more to that, and life has gotten better.
That's a hard trick. If you're the head of a company, it's a hard trick to learn. You'll be the last to speak.
Yes.
Because we've gotten to where we are by speaking up, right, and pulling a tire shock.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my title is President CEO, and I've said for years that I really want to be more CEO, which is the long-term guy, as opposed to the president.
Person in the O's nest.
Yes, as opposed to the president, which is what's the fire today, right? And I'm graduating that way. But
I find a good response, and it took a long. This did not come naturally for me. But when my team would ask me a question, I would just stop myself from providing an answer and respond with, "What do you think?
Yeah,
What would you do?"
yeah, we got really smart people.
Yeah,
And you got to let them be smart.
right. My goal as a business person is to be the stupidest person in the room.
Yes.
And because I think I'm fairly bright, you're fairly bright, brighter than me probably. But if I can be the stupidest person in the room, I'm going to be in good company. Right? I'll live well protected.
Let me interrupt with a quick anecdote that when you asked if I would come do this over here, my wife has come to the conference several times with me, and I told her that you asked me to do this, so I was going to be a speaker here at PanPack, and she says, "Isn't that where all the smart people are?" When
I think we're married to very similar people. Right? You're never a prophet in your own home. I think that's a good saying. We are in a very fast-paced industry. Things change as we sit here. Things have changed. The way we did things, the way we ran our business to get us from A to B will not get us from B to C. The rules keep changing. So we have to adapt. In a general business sense, we have to adapt new business skills. In our world, we have to adapt new business skills. We have to learn new technology, right? It's both. I can almost answer this question for you. I was going to say, how do you keep up with continuous education? And one of the answers is go to PanPack, right? And other conferences. But as a general rule, in between conferences, we don't have conferences every day. We actually have to go to work and build something. How do you personally keep up on the latest trends and technologies and methodologies, and how do you filter that through the ranks of your company so that they are up to date on, you don't want them to see a QFN for the first time and go, where are the leads? You can't see the leads. Where do we bend it? Obviously they need to be aware of modern technologies. How do you do that?
Personally, I read a lot. I read a lot of industry newsletters that come out. I listen to podcasts. I mean, I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting here with you, but yours is one that it comes out a couple of times a month, and I make sure that I listen to it. There's a few others that I make sure that I listen to, and that kind of keeps me up on changing things. The conferences you mentioned, whether it's PanPack, which this one is an odd one because it is a lot of different subjects, but it's very good subjects, interesting subjects. SOTAI is a big one. Just got back from Apex. That's a good one also. So that's what I do. As far as the company goes, we have people that go to some of those either as attendees or presenters. And so they're keeping up through that. And then one of the things, when we stayed up front, I'm against COVID. But one of the benefits of COVID, one of the good things that's come from COVID, is all of the online sessions and all the online training that's happening. And like SMTA now, the way the new membership works, my company's got 20 people that can be in it. And we can go to a chapter meeting in Seattle then, because the subject is interesting. Used to be I wouldn't send 20, I wouldn't get to send people to Seattle for a chapter meeting. But now we can. And so we're trying to stay up on that kind of thing. We have, from a more basic technology, we're very active in the IPC specification programs. We have people that are heads of the committees writing the standards. So we make sure we keep up to date on that. So every time one of them comes back from a meeting or has a conference call meeting, we get a briefing, and all of our top people get a briefing on what's going on. Here's what they're looking at changing from this to this, or something like that.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you 2 bits of advice to share with me and our live audience and our virtual audience. What advice would you give to someone wanting to start a business in general? Okay. And maybe even specifically that changes the advice, a business within our space. Like they want to start a contract manufacturer. They want to start some type of service company within our space. And then I'm going to ask you another advice question, but let's start with that. What advice would you give someone who is thinking about starting their own business?
I encourage it. I mean, it is having your own business. It is. There's a lot of benefits to go with it. There's a lot of headaches, a lot of stress, all of that goes with it, but there's still nothing quite like it. Find something you're passionate about, because you're going to be married to that business. I mean, I have, especially if your family is involved, but there's no way you could do this without your family being involved, whether they're on the payroll or they're just putting up with you when you get home. Because it's going to be talked about on every family vacation, which every vacation is going to be scheduled around which conference you're going to. And either you're going with me to this conference, or we can't go that week because I got to be in this place. Every holiday, you're thinking about your business. So don't get into something unless you're willing to put that commitment in. Having said that, if you've got the passion, do it. It's going to figure out how much money it's going to take you to do it, how much time it's going to take you to do it, and then at least double both of those, because it takes a lot more time, a lot more dollars than you think it's going to, because nothing happens fast. And but whether I would encourage somebody to be a contract manufacturer or not, I don't know whether that's a rough business. The margins are small. Cash flow could be horrible, which is a bad way to get started. There's a lot of investment in equipment required. But if that's what you want to do, if you've got the backing to do it, it'd be helpful.
Fair warning.
Yes. Yes.
I think something that's difficult makes it even more difficult.
Right. I don't want to talk you out of it, but make sure you know what you're getting into.
And we only have like 3 minutes left. So, real quick, what advice would you give to someone looking for a contract manufacturer?
Okay, there are, and I gave you the 30-minute answer here in 3 minutes, but there are a lot of different types of contract manufacturers. If you're wanting to get that, something relatively disposable, like that electronic flea collar that you mentioned, there are people that are really good at building that. If you want to build 3 of something that have to work, there are people that are really good at building that. That's the end I'm on, but there's all kinds of space in between. And in between, we can mix and match and be a little bit competitive. But figure out what you're looking for. If you're looking to build that flea collar, you don't need to come to me with the quality systems that are made to build medical devices, right, or military hardware. You can go to somebody that has the different systems in place that they don't have to do that. But if you're building something, if you've come up with a new pacemaker, come to somebody like me, because everything we build, by the time it goes out the door, it's going to work. And that's more important to you than getting them on the shelf at Target.
So to summarize, what I heard was figure out what level of expertise is required to build your product, medium, high, low, whatever, and look for someone where that's kind of the center of their lane.
Exactly. And everybody...
We're not making a leap down or a leap up.
Right. Everybody thinks their product is the most important thing, and it's got to, sure, it's got to work. But in reality, that's not the case on everyone out there.
But wonderful. Well, David, I promised this would go by in like 8 seconds. I hope it felt like 8 seconds. But thank you for flying all the way to Hawaii to be on this show. I know that's the only reason you're there.
That's it. Thank you. It was quite a sacrifice. Thanks for Thanks for doing this for our industry. It's a really good educational podcast, other than this one. But
I enjoy doing it. I get to ask questions. Some people will say, "How do you ask such good questions?" I said, "Well, I'm relatively ignorant, so I just ask questions for things I don't know about, and I don't know about a lot of things." So I think it's a great ride that I'm on, because I get to speak to leading experts, subject matter experts, and people from the EDU world, and other scientists, and people from manufacturing, and I just get an education. I think I'm owed a degree of some sort, but I'll talk to Dr. Ron on that and see if we can work something out.
Well, it really is a service you do for the industry.
Oh, thank you. I just appreciate it. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And to my audience and to our subscribers, thank you for listening, or thank you for watching. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, be sure and click the subscribe button so that you can be notified when new episodes are released. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, the Reliability Matters YouTube channel, be sure and click on the subscribe and bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. My thanks also to Mike Buto of Circuit Assembly Magazine. He produces PCB Chat. The show is syndicated there. And my friend and colleague, Fred Schenkelberg, at Ascendo Reliability, that also syndicates this show on reliability.fm. So regardless of where you're listening to this or watching this, thank you for listening or watching. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.